With this strategic pressure on the lifeline of global trade, Tehran has finally played the major geographical trump card it has held for decades. The move to lock the gates of the Gulf appears at first glance to be an indisputable geopolitical victory for Iran. However, this unprecedented move goes far beyond shaking the global economy. It has forced the entire world to activate that massive counterplan that will permanently neutralize Iran's threat capacity in the region. When you look at those narrow waters connecting the Persian Gulf to the Arabian Sea today, you see a state of complete interruption in international trade. Data from the International Maritime Organization clearly illustrates the gravity of the situation. Currently, nearly 2,000 massive oil tankers and commercial vessels remain stranded in the Strait of Hormuz, trapped within the range of missiles and drones. Moreover, the scope of this strategy is not limited to Hormuz alone. The Houthis in Yemen, directly joining the equation on Iran's side, have blockaded the southern gateway to the Red Sea Bab el-Mandeb with missiles. Under this double blockade, which has interrupted the entire supply chain stretching from Asia to Europe, the global economy is losing billions of dollars every hour. A lockdown system, a flawlessly executed plan, a tightening noose. However, instead of submitting to this lockdown, which turns geostrategic pressure points into weapons, the world's nations and international consortia decided to fundamentally rewrite the rules of the game. Global powers have pressed the button on 3 massive mega projects that will permanently reshape the region's map. The geographical root of these 3 projects, which will reshape the world's lifelines from top to bottom, is nothing but a geopolitical revolution. Now visualize the map and imagine these flawless escape plans for the global economy. Hidden at the very southern tip of the map is a massive waterway project set to pierce the heart of the rugged mountains once deemed impassable. A massive trade highway, originating from the farthest point of the Gulf, traversing Iraq from end to end and seeping directly into Europe's arteries via Turkey, is sure to emerge on the map. And in the west of the map, a steel energy corridor is taking shape, cutting through endless deserts to reach the cool waters of the Mediterranean. These 3 strategic moves, which alone render Iran's naval blockade completely ineffective, will vividly demonstrate to us all, as we delve into the details, how they are rewriting the rules of the Middle East. Now, first and foremost, this mega project that is keeping Tehran awake at night, that incredible feat of engineering, stands before us. The Hormuz Strait Bypass Canal, also known as the Hajar Mountains Canal Project. It is nothing but an engineering challenge. We are talking about an incredible waterway that cuts through Oman's rugged mountains. This project aims to split the impassable, rugged cliffs of Oman's Muzandam Peninsula right down the middle. Planned to be exactly 32 kilometers long, this canal will directly connect the Persian Gulf to the Sea of Oman. The narrowest and most challenging route was specifically chosen because the goal is to exit Iran's range of fire as quickly and safely as possible. The interior of the Hajar Mountains, whose peaks reach 700 meters, will be carved out by massive construction machinery. A total of 400 million cub-m of rock will be excavated to construct this massive waterway. The canal will be 25 m deep and 300 m wide. These massive dimensions were specifically designed to allow even the world's largest supertankers to pass through comfortably. Additionally, 3 massive lock systems, each 400 meters long and 25 meters deep, will be constructed to balance the differences in sea levels. The cost of this dream project, however, comes with a jaw-dropping price tag. While concept videos mention a figure of $200 billion, realistic analyses show that this mega construction project will require a budget ranging between $100 and $300 billion. So why is this massive investment being made? And how will it render the Strait of Hormuz inoperable? Currently, the Strait of Hormuz is a 33 kilometers long choke point through which 20 million barrels of oil pass daily. Exactly 20% of the world's oil must pass directly through here. Iran exploits this global dependency by holding ships hostage with mines, missiles, and fast attack boats. This is where the Hajar Mountains Canal completely changes the game. Ships will no longer have to enter the Strait of Hormuz's dangerous waters. Instead, they will use this safe corridor carved directly through the mountain to exit directly into the Arabian Sea. Thus, Iran's naval blockade strategy could become largely ineffective. Explosive-laden drones or suicide boats would likely be unable to operate within a tightly secured channel inside the mountain. Iran's leverage in the Strait of Hormuz could vanish by as much as 80% overnight. A scenario where Gulf oil can now flow safely to world markets completely independent of the Strait of Hormuz. Furthermore, this project could create a brand new hub rivaling the Suez Canal, not just for oil, but for global logistics as well. Oman and the United Arab Emirates could become one of the new massive strongholds of world trade. Even China's massive Belt and Road Initiative will likely want to integrate into this new secure route. Economically speaking, since the risk premiums created by the crisis will decline, the wild fluctuations in oil prices could become a thing of the past. Although the cost of hundreds of billions of dollars may seem enormous at first, it is a highly profitable investment when considering the trillions of dollars it could save the global economy. This project could transform the region's desperation into a massive construction site at any moment. Now, let's shift our focus from this wild waterway to the second mega project, which is far more concrete and advancing rapidly. Before us stands the Development Road Project, known internationally as the Development Road. This project is a massive land and rail corridor that will position Iraq and Turkey at the very heart of global trade. The project begins with great ambition at Grand Port, Iraq's strategic gateway to the Persian Gulf. It then traverses the length of Iraqi territory and enters Turkey via a border crossing. From there, it reaches the ports of Mersin, and via the Chokehold border crossing in Bulgaria connects directly to the arteries of Europe. We are talking about a route that is exactly 1,200 kilometers long, extremely modern and high capacity. This route is not just a highway, it is also a railway network designed to handle massive freight trains. The projected figures are truly staggering. Once fully operational, the goal is to transport exactly 7.5 million containers daily through this corridor. In addition, 33 million tons of bulk cargo will flow safely from the Gulf to Europe. The total cost of the project has been estimated at approximately $17 billion. And the most striking part is that this project is not just a dream. It is rapidly becoming a reality. A historic agreement on the financing model has been reached between Turkey, Iraq, Qatar, and the United Arab Emirates. Now a massive financing pool is being established and construction is set to begin shortly. So how will this massive land corridor render the suffocating Iranian blockade at the Strait of Hormuz ineffective? The logic is very simple, yet works flawlessly. Oil, gas, and massive container shipments leaving the Persian Gulf will no longer be loaded onto ships and enter the dangerous waters of the Strait of Hormuz. Instead, the cargo will be transferred directly to trains and trucks at the Grand FA port. It will be transported swiftly to Turkey and the Mediterranean via a secure land route that missiles and mines cannot reach. The advantages this geostrategic route could offer are immense. Iran's intimidating naval blockade could be completely rendered ineffective thanks to this steel corridor established overland. When the sea route becomes risky, this land route could be the sole and safest lifeline for billions of dollars in trade. Gulf oil could satisfy Europe's energy hunger via land without ever passing through the Strait of Hormuz. It could also offer a powerful alternative to blockages in the Suez Canal and Houthi attacks in the Red Sea. With this project, Turkey is rising to become the strongest logistics hub between East and West. Iraq, meanwhile, is undergoing a rebirth as a global transit country following years of war. While the power of this massive land bridge is evident, there is now a third project on the scene that is far more controversial, yet equally ambitious. Israel's plan to sell Gulf oil to world markets via Haifa. This is truly seen as a move that will shake up the geopolitical balances of the Middle East. Prime Minister Netanyahu has emerged with an extremely strategic proposal right in the midst of this crisis. He has explicitly put on the table the construction of new energy and oil pipelines that would completely bypass the Strait of Hormuz. This plan encompasses a massive pipeline network stretching from Saudi Arabia all the way to Israel's Haifa port. Oil from the Gulf countries will cross the desert and reach the cool waters of the Mediterranean directly. The aim is to completely eliminate the necessity for massive tankers to pass through the Strait of Hormuz. Netanyahu's move is not only an economic one, but also a very powerful political blow against Iran. Because with this pipeline, Israel is positioning itself as the new and reliable energy corridor hub for Europe. With this project, Gulf oil will be able to be pumped directly to European markets via the easiest and safest land route. The advantages offered by this mega initiative brought to the table by Israel are quite striking. Iran's much relied upon maritime blockade strategy may prove powerless against these steel pipelines running through the desert. For Saudi Arabia and other Gulf countries, opening up to the Mediterranean via Israel is seen as the greatest economic opportunity of the post-war era. Although the political challenges are high, the helplessness in the Strait of Hormuz is throwing the door wide open for such extraordinary alliances. On the other hand, while these three mega projects are shaping the map of the future, there are also lifeline pipelines currently active right in the midst of the crisis. This is precisely where Saudi Arabia's massive east-west pipeline, the Petroline pipeline, comes into play. Saudi Arabia has already deployed this immense asset as a countermeasure against the risk of the Strait of Hormuz closing. This massive pipeline, stretching a full 1,200 kilometers, runs from the oil fields in the east of the country toward the west all the way to the Red Sea. Starting at the Abqaiq facilities, this pipeline cuts across the desert and meets the sea at the port of Yanbu. Currently, this vital pipeline has been brought to peak capacity, operating at a full 7 million barrels per day. The moment Iran closed the Strait of Hormuz, the Saudis opened the valves all the way toward the Red Sea. Approximately 5 million barrels of crude oil per day are being exported to the world via this pipeline from the port of Yanbu. It is also claimed that hundreds of thousands of barrels of refined products reach markets via this secure route. It appears that while infrastructure limitations at the Yanbu port are currently preventing exports from increasing further, this route has become a lifeline for the global economy. The United Arab Emirates is not sitting idle either. The UAE is exporting 1.5 million barrels of oil daily via the Habshan-Fujairah pipeline without passing through the Strait of Hormuz. When all these active bypass routes are combined, a capacity of nearly 9 million barrels per day is diverted from Iran's reach and brought to market. Of course, this figure is not enough to cover the full 20 million barrels passing through the Strait of Hormuz daily. However, it serves as the strongest shield preventing the global economy from collapsing entirely. In these days, when oil prices have increased to $115 per barrel, and risk premiums have gone through the horizons, these alternative routes could help cool the market's feverish pace, at least to some extent. Moreover, in an environment where freight costs have surged by 500%, these land-based transit routes are practically worth their weight in gold. In other words, What is preventing inflation from spiraling out of control on a global scale? Are these strategic moves by countries to bypass the Strait of Hormuz? Iran's attacks in the Strait of Hormuz and threats of an economic crisis seem destined to gradually lose their impact as these mega projects come to fruition. Because the entire world has painfully experienced just how dangerous its deadly dependence on a single strait is. This experience has transformed the construction of trillion-dollar alternative routes from an option into a necessity. With Houthi threats in the Suez and Iranian missiles in the Strait of Hormuz converging, the golden age of maritime trade has suffered a severe blow. However, the global system is managing to break this shockwave by shifting toward highways, rail networks, and deep mountain tunnels. Over the next decade, these three mega projects appear poised to rise as the new pillars of the global economy. But there is another critical and ominous scenario here that must not be overlooked. Will Iran silently watch as its greatest trump card is rendered useless by these mega projects? The Tehran regime's strategic orientation could eventually target these steel lines and channels aimed at breaking the blockade in the Strait of Hormuz. Long-range kamikaze drones capable of crossing borders could appear over these massive construction sites in the future. Cyber attacks on pipelines or sabotage operations carried out through proxy forces will seriously test the security of these projects because Iran, rather than engaging in direct warfare, may attempt to sever these new land-based arteries using asymmetric methods, just as it has done at sea. However, despite all these high risks, the arrow has already left the bow. The world has long since given up on helplessly waiting for the crisis winds Iran has stirred up in the Strait of Hormuz to subside. Rather than hoping that global military powers will resolve this crisis through force, nations have begun building their own permanent paths to salvation. That massive canal cutting through the Hajar mountains, the steel networks passing through Turkey, and the pipelines stretching across the deserts are humanity's most concrete response to this blackmail. Time is now working in favor not of those who block the straits, but of those who produce the intellect and engineering to bypass them. This is not merely a regional infrastructure initiative. It also signifies a complete rewriting of global geopolitics. For centuries, empires and modern states have ruled the world by controlling narrow straits and strategic waterways. Gibraltar, Suez, Malá, and, of course, Hormuz. But today, the power of engineering and massive capital is shattering these ruthless rules dictated by geography. Iran's famous "I'll close Hormuz" card is perhaps being played on the table for the last time in history with such effectiveness. Because once these mega projects are fully operational, Tehran's greatest diplomatic and military lever will be shattered forever. Those two 000 ships stranded in the waters of the Strait of Hormuz are in fact preparing to go down in history as the final snapshot of the old world. Global capital never tolerates uncertainty or blackmail. The will that keeps those ships waiting there today has already approved budgets worth billions of dollars that will completely alter their routes tomorrow. If you look closely, the signatures behind these projects belong not to a single country, but to massive multinational consortia, Gulf capital, Western tech giants, and Asian trade giants. In other words, Iran has effectively declared war not just on its neighbors or the West, but directly on the massive, unstoppable gears of global trade. History has always shown us this. No power has ever been able to permanently halt the flow of trade. Water always finds its own path. Just as global trade today finds its new path by tunneling through the Hajar Mountains, crossing Iraq's deserts, or extending directly to Mediterranean ports. Countries now entrust their security not to the waters of a narrow strait, but to tunnels carved into impassable mountains, thousands of kilometers of steel rails, and smart pipelines that cross deserts. As these new corridors are built, brand new military security shields, massive trade cities, and high-tech logistics hubs will rise around them. In short, the world is closing the door on that fragile era where trillions of dollars went down the drain with a single missile or a suicide boat. Instead, a brand new age of corridors is beginning, one defined by alternatives, speed, and uninterrupted trade. It seems that geography is no longer destiny. Rather, it is a vast playing field that can be reshaped with intellect, capital, and steel. And the new rule of this game is crystal clear. Those who block the path will lose, while those who open new paths will govern the world of the future. So, in your opinion, which of these massive projects, once completed, will most drastically shift the global balance of power? What do you think Iran's next surprise move might be in response to these mega projects? Thank you for watching.